Welcome everyone. Welcome to TechTalk Friday. And today we have back with us again. Last week Tareef joined us, and we talked a little bit about technology, and we talked a little bit about AI, but not so much. And today we're going to delve deeper into this whole topic of artificial intelligence. Tareef, welcome to the show. Really happy to have you with us, and glad you're able to join us again. I know today we want to talk a little bit about AI, and we're talking about how we're going to leverage AI, how we basically are able to adopt it, how it works, and what does it look like in a practical sense for a lot of us. I think that's kind of the struggle out here. But before we do that, right? I mean, the tech that you have been working is on people management, and you've embedded AI into people management. And there's a question, right? I mean, there's tech for sales, with CRMs and a whole bunch of other things. There's tech for every single function now, finance, expenses, and so on. But there seems to be a reluctance for tech in people management, or at least the adoption rate doesn't seem to be as high. Even ed tech, I think, is not growing as what people imagine it will be. What do you think is the issues, and why do you think that tech works in everything, but doesn't seem to be deploying so well in people management?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's something that I've been testing internally for a while. My latest theory is because people management it's very hard to measure. It's very hard to hold accountability, right? We don't really know how effective we are as managers, even ourselves, and how do we know that of others? When we look at a sales team, the numbers are very clear. We know how much revenue the team is bringing in, so we can bring in tools that help us improve in those areas. Let's generate more leads. Let's get more throughput in the pipeline. So tech has been able to be adopted because the results are very measurable. And we could say the same thing for accounting departments and for anything else really. But I think when it comes to people management, the idea of accountability and measurement has always been very hard to understand. And so the case to be made about bringing it into this managerial leadership role is harder to make. But I think that can change. I think now we have a better scientific understanding of what makes great teams, great managers. If we can be able to measure those things better, I think there's a very fantastic case to be made because people management is such a important lever for any organization, right? It directly relates to or correlates to productivity, performance, and all these other good things that we need to pay attention to.
And you talk about science. There's a lot more science today in people management. Like, talk us through that maybe very quickly before we jump into this AI space.
Yeah,
What's
I
the
mean,
science?
the landmark study that I always go back to is back in the day when Google came up with its first Project Aristotle product, Project Oxygen, when it was really using data for the first time to test hypotheses like, do we really need managers? Are they important at all? Hey, we're all pretty smart here. Can we just manage ourselves? And through scientific process, they found incredibly uh, clearly that marriages were incredibly important, that we shouldn't just self-manage, that having a person be there to be the source of psychological safety, support, and all these things. And I think it led to other studies that helped us understand what are the most important characteristics of a manager. So now we do have the building blocks of what makes great managers. And I think it brings a very important case to be made that people management should change according to the data and the science that we have around management sciences. But how much of that is really happening, or how much of how we're managing people today is very much stuck in the same methods and practices that we used 5 decades ago, right? So I think there is not just about technology adoption, but also adopting better practices and realizing that to be able to adopt better practices, technology can help a lot. Because without technology, it's overly
Yeah.
burdening of
Yeah.
managers to do all of that.
And we'll come back, and we'll talk a little bit about that whole people management and technology bit towards the later part. But I want to dive into this whole topic today of leveraging AI. And I know you have successfully done that in your app, in your product. And I think a lot of people aspire to adopt AI. and leverage it, whether it's in operations, products, even in the way they service their customer, or in even the way they manage and or service their employees. So let's talk a little bit about adopting the AI. How does it work? What does it really look like? And how can we practically deploy it in our organization? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the knee-jerk reflex reaction to bringing AI into the workplace is what can AI help replace? What human effort can we replace with AI, right? And that philosophy is all about reducing cost and effort. So and I think there's a lot to that. The way we use ChatGPT today is, hey, generate a job post for me, or hey, write this email for me. It's all about replacing our own effort. I think that the other important things that AI can do for us today already that we're not using it enough for is improving and enhancing our performance. Hey, this is what I've done. Help me make it better. Or teach me over time how I can improve in this way. So it's not a reflex that we use because I think technology has always been there. It's always been around to help us reduce effort. And I think that while AI will continue to do that for us, I think that's where organizations could say, hey, look, we want to do more than just cut costs. We have a lot of human resource. How do we elevate them? How do we make them 5, 10 times more productive than they are today? Where are our bottlenecks? And instead of treating these upskill or improvements as events that happen within a year, AI can make it continuous, right? It's not just what happens within a training room or workshop, which is incredibly important, but also what happens in between those workshops as well. That in my day to day, I'm also applying what I'm learning. The AI is helping me guide and coach me along the way. I think that's really important.
And what would be some practical ways? I mean, when you talk about improving performance, let's say for a manager or somebody else, I mean, how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, I'll share something, um, because that's something that we've been working on very diligently at Happily is how do we improve? We all know how important feedback is, right? We talk about it all the time. Quick, mediocre feedback or bad feedback is harmful to the organization. Great feedback elevates our ability to understand what's going on and also improve things around us. So this is an example of how AI can help with this. The first step that we take when we give feedback to someone else, we have to say, how does this feedback sound to someone else? Does it sound constructive? Um, and it's also a uh, a chance to improve our self-awareness as well. So that's what we've done using AI with Happily is as you're typing in your response as feedback, Happily in real time is telling you how you sound. Do you sound passive aggressive? Do you sound happy or sad? Because that's what the receiver is going to be getting. And a lot of times we're like, oh no, this is just my style. I talk like this. But the other person doesn't know that. So that's what when we do our anecdotal research and also quantitative research, we find that to be a problem. Is that we take our style thinking that somebody else understands how we sound and how we feel about things. But that's where a lot of misunderstanding happens. And AI can help really well with this. When we found that when we're providing this real time feedback, people are drastically changing how they're giving feedback. The quality of feedback is so much better. And in the end of the day, the conversations that we have post feedback is so much higher quality, right? It's less about being defensive and interrogative. It's more about being constructive and focus on improvement. So these are like little things within the workflow that really go a long way. And AI can already help with this. It's embedded in the process. They don't feel it's there at all, but it's something that with these visual cues that we can present, it does improve really important parts of how we communicate.
And when we talk about, I mean, most managers are concerned about a couple of things. One is product, and one is the performance of the people, but more importantly, how operations are possibly enhanced, or improved. And so this example is one on how managers can improve their performance in terms of getting feedback and delivering it and so on and so forth. How what are your thoughts in terms of adopting AI to augment or improve operations and drive enhancements to your product?
Yeah, totally right. A lot of different applications for how that can be done. From a manager's point of view, the incentives make it very clear what they should focus on, right? Of course, performance is always incentivized most, so they would care about that. When the incentives start to change so that managers also care about other things operationally, like retaining talent or how engaged a person is, then AI can then be more catered towards that. But I think it starts from the incentives, that the incentive is never there. And it's always, hey, HR team, you're responsible for engagement and retention, which I never understand because that's really unfair to HR, right? Nobody ever feels that I'm engaged at work because of my HR team. The HR team is incredibly important, but the feeling that a person has is not tied to that. It's tied to their people manager. And so I think without solving the accountability problem, the operational responsibilities of a manager will always be just around performance. And that's what we see behaviors that don't really lead to performance improvements because we're just all the time communicating around goals and what we haven't reached and what we have. And that I think more goes into that. I think the argument to be that has to be very that shouldn't really be an argument anymore, but it still is how much does engagement contribute to performance? Do we see that there's a link at all, right? Or we say it doesn't matter how engaged a team is, their performance is the same. That doesn't sound right, right? In both intuitively and scientifically, greater engagement leads to greater performance. It's the fuel that we need to get where we need to go. But we don't take care of the fuel. We don't take care of the energy and the engagement that we need to create. And again, goes back to the very beginning. I think it's because engagement is very hard to measure. What has been in the past, right? We over rely on annual engagement surveys to measure engagement, which it doesn't really do very well. So I think there's a very strong case to be made about engagement being measured in real time. And we could do that today and use AI to help managers operationally manage engagement and engaging their teams better. That leads then to better performance. So I think that's how we've seen it play really well,
Okay.
and that's something that we're trying to encourage more of.
Okay. So I mean, one of the things, I mean, speaking on your point on engagement, I think one of the things that you always, the comment that you always make is that 97%, 90%, 97% of moments are unaccounted for in the traditional employee experience journey. Um, what does that, I mean? And I know part of what you are saying is that AI and technology can help to reduce that to a much smaller number, right? I mean, I'm assuming that's kind of talk us through this a little bit.
Yeah. So with employee experience, when if you Google any chart or graphic about what it looks like, it kind of maps it out as discrete parts of a journey, right? Okay, on hiring and onboarding, and then there's like learning development, and then all the way until the employee exit. But when we look at it in these journeys and we extrapolate them into the amount of days that it takes up in terms of the employee life journey, it's very little. That the 97% of the moments in between those parts. So just by what we're doing is we're about optimizing for the 3% of moments, where the 97% of moments that impact our employee experience the most, like the day to day, like today, I'm coming into work, there's no training development. I've been hired already. I'm not exiting today. So what is that? What does my employee experience look like today? It's the relationships that I have with my manager and my peers. That is what influences my experience the most, and the work that I do and how much purpose aligned it is. And those are the things that we need to stop neglecting. That in those moments, how good is that experience for the employee? Do they feel connected between what their work is and the company goals and how aligned they are? We don't have enough of a sense of that, and we wait too long to find out what that is. So I think that's what we're talking about. 97% of the time is the space that we fill. How do we use AI to make that 97% of moments a lot more it's satisfying
Right.
and valuable and meaningful.
So let's dive deeper into AI. So as you build your product, and this was a long time ago, right? About 8-9 years ago. Tell us a bit about your journey into the world of AI. And I know that probably may have been triggered by your experience at Google when you were there. and understanding it. Talk us through that journey of how you ultimately decided, even way before many others even started to do that, to build your entire product using AI, and how is it going today?
Well, I mean, to be very frank, I think 7, 8 years ago when we conceptualized Happily and put .ai in the name, the AI that we're thinking about is very different from the AI that exists today. Um, but the heart of why remains the same. We wanted to use AI because we realized that within the function of people management and leading teams, there's so much information, and the challenge is distilling it out and understanding patterns within that information. And AI was at that time was able to do that well already, right? Can we predict when people are disengaged or are going to be disengaged or about to leave the organization? Because if we can solve that problem. We can have that conversation 3 months before that person decides to leave, and that helps a team a lot.
Yep.
So that was our first initial use case of AI. And then it expanded to say, okay, what other things can we proactively help with other than just retention challenges? And we realized that, yeah, we could detect when people needed help before they even knew they needed help. And for them to get proactive support from their managers just felt so much different than when they had to ask for it themselves. And a lot of cultures, it's not easy for people to ask for help, right? They go to the manager at the very last minute. Sometimes they don't go at all. Sometimes they go to the wrong people for help, right? Instead of going to the most competent person in the room, they go to the person that they like the most. And that person is not necessarily the person who can best help them solve the problem. So I think that AI was able to help with us with this, is that if we knew these things, if we knew what they needed help with, then we could get them to the right person at the right time. And I think that's how
Yep.
we've kind of, yeah, went with it.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I guess as you are today, right? And I want to go back to this whole concept of how you are optimizing people management, leveraging AI and your tool. What are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way that other business owners, or folks that are grappling? And because today everybody is saying my product's AI powered, but we're simply slapping in the fact that there's some bit of functionality here, or I'm using ChatGPT to do a search, or do a sort of a write up here and there. It's not really as building a product as you have. Pretty much making sure that different elements are embedded in, and there's predictable. There's predictions, there's this, and there's numerous other factors built in. What sort of advice would you provide to business owners saying, okay, I need to get into this AI space, but how do I do it?
I'm not going to be very popular by saying this, but I think that fundamentally we overestimate our ability to understand people, lead teams, and manage teams well. Right? The amount of managers who say they've got this, they're great managers, doesn't reflect what employees are saying about management. Right? There's a huge gap between why a lot of employees are saying, yeah, so I think one is accepting that to be true, that other it's like that famous thing around driving, right? How many people think that you're an above average driver, and 98% of people will raise their hands. Like, that's not possible. Above average is 50, right? So we overestimate this ability, and also overestimate our ability to that we have a strong culture within our organization. Our data shows this, that employees experience toxic behaviors 10 times more often than the CEO does, right? So when the CEO says, yeah, our culture is great, we don't have any toxic behaviors, I I would really be skeptical about that, because the truth is that a lot of times it's not visible to that topmost person. So we don't have the reality of the situation a lot of the time. So I think that one is that because if we don't think there's a problem at all, then there's nothing to solve. And so and bringing technology into the mix, but maybe doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So I think one is there are there things that we should say we need to improve here, that if we improve it, even though we might think we're good at it, just by improving it more will make us better. I think that's the first thing that we have to align on. Secondly, is that, okay, then if that's the case, how can technology help here? How can we use technology to help not only make our managers more accountable, but help them do their work a lot better and easier as well, right? How do we make it so that a manager doesn't have to spend most of their time checking in with the team and figuring out progress and where people are stuck? That's really effortful, right? Um, Take it from me, I'm an extremely introverted manager, and that took a lot out of me every day before I built Happily. And Happily selfishly helped me improve in that way. I didn't have to extend myself and overexert myself every single day just to make sure my teams were okay, right? And then yes, it helps solve the problem. The it's never about removing the nature of sorry, it's not about turning your company into a company that doesn't have any problems. It's about changing the nature of problems, right? You can have a company where the nature of problems right now is solving internal conflicts, disengagement, etc. Or you can have a problem where we want none of that is a problem anymore because our people management is really strong. Now a set of problems are different. And so for me, it's always about that. We want to be
Yep.
able to use technology and AI to elevate the types of problems that we're solving each day. And I think that we've confidently we've seen that happen as
Mm.
people have adopted the right tools.
Mm. So I got a comment from Dr. Karuna. Excellent insights. So I think people are appreciating some of your thoughts on how we can augment AI. So thank you, Tarif. We're gonna take a very quick short break right now, and we're gonna one of the things I think that one of the folks that are supporting us in this program is Cyber Armor. So if you have not checked out Cyber Armor and their tool Shepherd, please go ahead and check it out. Google Cyber Armor, and I think you can sort of get some information on Cyber Armor at cyberarmor.asia. I'm going to show a short little video on Shepherd. This is their interactive tool that Cyber Armor's produced that enables recording of all transactions that happen in your network. But more importantly, it's unhackable and has 100% unhackable rate. So let's take a look at how Shepherd has uniquely perfected and based on recently I just heard about the big hack in Indonesia, the airports. Cybersecurity becomes a critical thing. So here's a quick overview of Shepherd from Cyber Armor. Welcome back to TechTalk Friday, and with me today is Tareef Jafferi, who runs Happily.ai. If you want to check out more on what Happily does, I think we are an organization in Malaysia that is using Happily, and I've seen its power. You can check out Happily.ai or Budaya.app, and you can connect with Tareef. I think all the info or requests that come out to Happily.ai come to you directly, right, Tareef? Uh, so it's Tareef Jafferi, CEO of Happily.ai, and we're talking a little bit about leveraging AI and how we can leverage AI in our organization. Tareef, I want to jump back to Happily because we talked about AI and how we can augment it, and how business leaders, some advice that you gave to business leaders in terms how AI can be leveraged, but more importantly, how you can augment the product, the operations, and also its people management. And we talked a little bit about how huge number of the employee experience is blind spots, and how technology can actually reduce those blind spots. And I think technology works in many ways, right? And one of the big fears about AI, I think, is about job displacement. So what you are saying is that today there are a lot of blind spots where technology comes in and they eradicate those blind spots. So then we get we move the employee experience from 97% blind spots to 50, 40, 30, and so on and so forth. But the bigger fear most people think is that it's going to take away that 3% of work that the HR people are doing, or the product guys are doing, that currently is being done. What's your response to that?
Um, I don't have a good one other than to say that I think the argument that AI will not take away work is false. I think you're already seeing it happening, especially in the gig economy, right?
Mm,
AI is really good at solving problems that are low context work, which means that it doesn't need to understand a lot of context. You give it
yep.
one page of information and it will do it for you. And that's what the gig economy was built on, was that if there is not a lot of context that you need, you don't have to be in this organization for 3 years to understand it. We could give you one project, a paper that shows you what you have to do. You could start giving that to an AI instead. So that's
Yep.
where a lot of jobs I think will be displaced, is there. But it also tells us then that context is really important. That the amount of time that we're able to spend in an organization, understand it and understand its nuance, will be the key differentiator between us and the AI, right? And
Mm,
I think that's where we need to focus more on, is that, okay, how can you be a person who's more aware of context, and then use AI as well to improve in that area, right? So I think the people I've seen use AI best are the ones who are able to do that. They're using AI not to generate things that help them communicate more or speak more, but they're using it to help them listen better. It's a completely different shift. It's they're not using it to increase their information flow out, but information flow in, right? And we have to be very intentional about that, because again, it doesn't come instinctively all the time. So for that, I think for me, that's my take on this, is that it will, but so we need to figure out how we can be uh, have more context so that we cannot be replaced by an AI that doesn't need a lot of context to get some. It can only will do work that requires little context.
so let's go back to happily. I think one of the things I think that happily does, and maybe you can share a little bit in terms of why your perspective is that every organization must have tools like happily to ensure that they not I mean not just people management, right, in terms of the numerous pieces that happily brings to the table in terms of making sure your culture is transformed, making sure there is engagement levels, and I think the third piece that you sometimes touch on is on employee intelligence. How, as marketing has customer intelligence, HR needs to be the connoisseur or sort of the leader in the employee intelligence space. Talk us through that, and maybe if you can share a little bit about how happily is this transformative tool.
And fundamentally, why do we organize into a company in the first place? We organize because we're a group of people trying to work together towards a common goal. And that's not as simple as it sounds. Working
Mm,
together means that we have to understand each other and understand each other's nuances and all the time. And it gets harder as we scale our companies. And we see that a company that has 10 people will operate and manage people practices differently than a 100-person or a 1,000-person company, because it gets exponentially harder not to do tact, but to communicate well. And so for us, that is the fabric that holds the organization together, is how well can we communicate and what are we communicating about, and how effectively is it keeping us aligned. And today, without technology, we can get lost a lot of times. We're not doing the right things. Um, and I think that's one of the fundamental reasons why we wanted to build a tool to help the businesses understand and manage that better. But of course, from the employee side, which has been the primary direction for us, is how do we make people feel happier and healthier at work? We want work to be something that energizes us. It doesn't have to every day, because everybody has their ups and downs, but we should be able to manage all of that better, right? And so I think that's the premise in which Happily was built. We've seen really good results that show us that great culture, really high employee satisfaction scores are a byproduct of strong relationships and nothing else. It's not the amount of benefits you could throw at employees. It's not about anything else that we used to think about. And so if we focus on the right areas, and we can use AI and technology to help us, we can really make a measurable impact on the organization. Right? I think that's the very clear direction that we have for what we're doing.
all right. And as we wrap this up, I mean, what advice would you give to younger folks or young or professionals that are thinking of getting into the AI space? How does one even dabble or get started in this space?
Yeah, I mean, it's to jump in with both feet. I think to be apprehensive or fearful of it is not an unusual reaction, but it just means you're more cautious and aware of the goods and the bads. But it doesn't mean that we have to understand it well, and to do that, you have to use it. And then the advice is don't rely on the single shot, meaning don't just rely on what AI gives you as soon as you say it's something. Like you don't just type in one message to ChatGPT, get a result, and say, "Hey, that was terrible. This doesn't work." The greatest outcomes are multi-shot. Means you have to converse with it for a very long time before you get a good output. Right? And then later on, we will learn about how to construct prompts or even just communicate in a way that gets us the meaningful response sooner. But I think a lot of times I've seen people judge the AI based on its first prompt or response back. And we would never do that. We shouldn't do that to humans either. Just because you have asked a question and the human at the other end of the call says something that you didn't expect to be, you expected something better, you don't hang up the phone immediately, I hope. Right? You kind of give it a chance and ask it more questions and help it understand and formulate its thinking. I think maybe we
Absolutely.
could treat AI the same way and we might see better results as a byproduct.
Absolutely. And so we're excited. Tareef's going to be in KL September 18th for the Malaysia Leadership Summit. And you can check it out and register for that event at leeramix.com/MLS24. So we look forward to having you in person again back to KL, Tareef. It's been exciting having this conversation with you. Thank you so much for your time and your insights on AI. I think a lot of practical things that we can take back for as we wrap up this show, maybe one final nugget of wisdom that you can leave with all of us, in terms of how what's maybe one thing that we can do today to better ourselves as managers or as leaders, in not just in terms of AI, but just in general, as we close out the show.
Yeah, I think the thing that I like to think about all the time, which I would encourage everybody to, is that how can we use AI to help improve our self-awareness? I think there's no ceiling to that, that there is
Mm.
always something we can do to understand how we impact other people better. And a world where everybody does that is a world I want to live in. So yeah, that's my
All
take.
right, Tarek, thank you so much. It's been awesome having you here. This is Tech Talk Friday for you this week. Look forward to next Friday, same time, same place here on Tech Talk Friday. Bye bye, everyone.